in on the Wednesday night hump here at Upstairs to the Right Music. We are so pleased to be here as always every Wednesday night, 11 p.m. Central European Time, and then Sunday at Mike's at 11 p.m. Central European Time on Sunday. So we're looking forward, let me turn that down. We're looking forward to seeing you on Sunday nights as well. If you like what you hear tonight, I always start out by saying that time is a valuable thing, and you spending a little bit of yours with me is greatly appreciated. So I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time tonight, for tuning in. It's always great to have you here. Scott, welcome, sir. How you doing? Ben, how you doing? Welcome to you guys. Boy, Scott, I'm glad you're here tonight. I got a feeling we're gonna have some interesting things to mod this evening. Good to see you guys. Run Riot, sir. How you doing? Welcome, welcome. Man, the gang's all here. Welcome, guys. Well, I usually start out by warming up, so I'll warm. Michael, how you doing? Welcome, sir. I talk about things, so little to talk about in so much time. No, wait a minute. Scratch that, reverse it. I think that I just saw a video from a channel called Ministry of Guitar. Interesting enough, he is a guy out of Singapore. As you know, I lived in Singapore for a long time, half a decade. And I was watching his video, recent one called The Slow Death of Guitar YouTube. And I found it very interesting. It was actually slightly depressing, to tell you the truth. But he was making some actually very valid points about guitar YouTube. And I don't agree with all of it, but I do agree with there, as I've stated myself before, that just from personal experience, that it's a hard, slow grind. And it's getting even slower and harder. But because this is the channel that's not trying to sell you anything, I don't have a wall of guitars behind me because really I only play two guitars, to tell you the truth, and a bass, an acoustic guitar. So I don't have a wall of guitars. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm actually trying to help you to appreciate the gear, not the beer, well, the beer too, maybe. The gear that you already, oh, Freudian slip. Uh, Actually, tonight I am drinking like a tonic. It is disgusting, but I've been told that it'll help me sleep later, so we'll see if it works. Um, and just basically navigate your way through this world of secondhand gear. I don't talk about new gear too much. It's not my thing really on this channel. Marcus W. Welcome. How you doing? No, not Obama. Like, everybody tries to compare me to him, and as I've said it before, not really one of my favorites as an individual. But I digress. I'm really not trying to say anything. I'm good, is the motto of this channel. Can't stop playing music. Hello, how you doing? So good to see you. Welcome. And I think that honestly, in this day and age, with things being as wacky as they are, that good advice sometimes, sound advice sometimes, is hard to come by. And so I do try to give a little bit of that. You excuse me, my cat is throwing up a hairball here in the corner. Ellie. Oh, that wasn't a good one. And it's right on my clothes, too. Not on the guitar. Sorry about that. Frederick Rogers, welcome. Yes, lovely. Just what I need for the intro of my live stream. Well, anyway, guys, tonight I'm going to talk about a topic. By the way, check that out. Slow Death of Guitar YouTube, Ministry of Guitar. Go over his channel, check him out. He's got some great points, and he's got some stats too. I always like the guys who do their homework and do their homework, which is actually the subtopic of tonight. Do your homework, as always. But a guy who does his homework like him comes up with the stats and shows you that YouTube guitar channels in general are experiencing a 30, maybe even to 40% decline in terms of viewership. And that has been decline that has occurred, in his opinion, in the last year or so. I've said that it's been a little bit longer than that. I've been saying it for 2 years now. But again, he attributes to YouTube algorithm, paid content, and gear fatigue. And I agree with him. You done? You sound like you were coughing up. Oh, so you're going to come over here and do it so you can be closer to the mic. I see. Well, that's nice, Ellie. Why don't you go out? Go on. Did I lose my pillow? Well, that's all right. I didn't need it. Um, you know, the gear fatigue, I can kind of vouch on myself too, because you know I never, the wall of guitars. You go on certain guys' channel. I've talked about this before, and they have a wall of guitars behind them, which in itself is not a bad thing. But I think that you have to read the room, and uh, I think that the room right now is not appreciative of excess. And I think that new gear, and boy, she is just hacking it up. I think that new gear and channels that really are talking about, hey, look at all this stuff, is not really reading the room right now. I think the room really, if there is a room left, and 30 to 40% of it has departed, for those that are left, I think that knowledge, like channels like this one, not to toot my own horn, I'm just being honest, I think that they are of better read of the room, in my opinion. And so there's that. Check out his channel. Check out that video, Slow Death of Guitar YouTube, Ministry of Guitar. Check out his channel. Tonight, I'm going to try something. I've got this lovely screen here behind me. The reason I changed my setup, if you've noticed within the last few months, I've changed my live stream setup, is so that I can use this screen to show you guys stuff. And I haven't done it. And it's mostly out of just not wanting to do stuff live and mess up. But the second part of it's a little bit of laziness. But tonight we're going to use the big screen here tonight to talk about something. Now, tonight's title is Train Your Eye, Trust Your Gut, Research the Gear. If you guys know this channel, and everybody here does very well, I appreciate all you guys always showing up and supporting me. My room hasn't left. As a matter of fact, my room is growing. Which is why I said I think I'm on the right read of the room, on the right track with my channel. In regards to its content, what we talk about here. But honestly, do your homework has always been a motto of this channel. Do your homework, do your homework. I always say, do your homework. If you're going to buy something, whether it's new or secondhand, uh, especially in this day and age when you're buying things on the internet, sight unseen, you haven't touched it, you don't know whether you like it or not. It's not the greatest way to buy guitars or music gear, honestly speaking, but it is what it is. If you're going to do that, do your homework. And I mean, really do your homework. Research what people are saying about it. Do your own homework about where it's made, what it's made from. Specs on paper are one thing, what people are saying about it are another thing altogether. I generally find when it comes to new guitars. Old guitars, vintage guitars, especially made in Japan vintage guitars, are shrouded in a lot of mystery and a lot of internet rumor. Um, I do believe that I am one of the few people on YouTube or anywhere out there who pointed out the fact that the R2 Pros didn't cease their production in Japan after the Matsumoku factory closed in 1987. On the contrary, they were being produced in other factories that were just down the street. And for years, there has been that rumor out there that every Aria Pro 2 made after 1987 is a Korean made one or a Chinese made one. And that is incorrect. And so I have the documentation, the books that I can quote for the people who wrote about it, and also from CIMIC over in Korea's, logs too, to back up that they had been doing also that Aria Pro 2s weren't produced in Korea prior to 1987, and they had been producing Korean Aria Pro 2s, or I'm sorry, Aria guitars since the 70s. So a lot of shrouded mysteries and myth, and you really have to do your homework, which is what I do. And I do it so that I can share it with you guys so that it may stimulate you to do your own homework or to dig a little bit or say, that's interesting, or dig a little deeper. Tonight, I am going to give you an example of how doing your homework can pay off in a real big, big way. Let me catch up here in the chat. Ghost Behind the Sun. Hi, can you shed some light on Haraby guitars? Are they good quality? No, I'm sorry, I can't, Ghost Behind the Sun. I'll tell you what, if you come back for the Sunday night live, which we do coming up this coming Sunday, same time, same bad channel, I will look into that. I promise. I always keep my word. You can ask everybody here, and I will. It doesn't ring a bell right now, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'll look into it for you. So come back on Sunday, and I'll have an answer for you. It's actually not incorrect. It might have been made in the U.S., but most parts were made in China. Okay, all right, interesting. Interesting. Thank you, Harv, for being here. Good to have you. Run Riot. Speaking of that, Eastman, I mentioned last time got delivered today. Nice. Haven't opened it yet. It got one of those let it sit and acclimate for 24 hours before opening stickers, and I don't mind waiting. Yeah, the Eastman guitars have poly, are sprayed in poly, not in poly, in nitro, not poly. So with poly guitars, you could pretty much if it's the winter time, I let them sit for about an hour or two. Poly guitars. With nitro guitars, yes, you really want to wait about 12 hours or so before you open that box. I've seen bad checking occur. One of the first guitars I bought in Singapore was a Gold Top P90 and Gibson, and the reason I got it for 2,000 Singapore dollars at that time, don't know what that is now, cash, because they had taken it out of the box immediately, and it just looked like a cracked egg all up and down it. So yeah, it does happen. And that's Singapore where they're coming, you know. Anyway, if a phone is made in U.S. but 95% of the parts are made in China, was it made in the U.S.? If it was assembled, there's a difference between assembled and the parts where they were assembled. Now, if the parts were assembled, most things these days, the parts come from many different countries, but they're assembled in one place, or United States, or China, or Japan, things like that. That's part of the global marketing chain system, and so we can't these days say that any one thing, everything that created that went into creating it, manufacturing it, is made in one place. I think that's one of the problems we're seeing, and one of the leverages that the United States government is using at this time in terms of tariffs in order to use as leverage. So there is that. Okay, thanks. You got it. Damn, that sucks, Rum Riot says. Hello. Hello to you too. Good to see you. You sound like that Broken Bamboo. I don't know what Broken Bamboo, who that is. True, good analysis. Thank you. Now with vintage guitars, because back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, or early to the late 90s, most of the stuff that was made in country of origin was 100% made there. For example, the Japanese guitars most of those parts were produced in Japan. As a matter of fact, 100%. So if you have a vintage Japanese guitar, if you're talking about that, you can say, yes, this, is a 100% made in Japan guitar. It's why they had made in Japan and crafted in Japan on the back of the headstocks on some fenders. Now, that being said, we cannot say that, of course, of modern guitars because a lot of those parts come from different places. It may be assembled in Indonesia, but they may be sourcing their different parts from different parts of the world. So there's that. Now, that's one of the reasons why. Sorry, Harv says anything made by Japan, I wouldn't mind owning. Its quality for the most part. Yes, sir. We're going to talk about that tonight. And we're going to use the screen here. So that's why vintage made in Japan guitars are so collectible now, because of their value, which is creeping up there. But we'll talk about that. But also the craftsmanship, and the point that all the parts, everything, was made in one place, and that's something rare these days, which is one of the things that makes them collectible. Now, I want to show you guys something. Let's see if I can do this without screwing this up. I doubt it, but we'll give it a shot anyway. Okay, over my shoulder here, you can see the screen, is a Greco. This is being filmed by my agent over in Japan. He just received it. It's in a FedEx box on its way here as we speak. But what you're seeing here is a Greco guitar from 1977 that I just bought. As you know, I do my guitar safari every month for my business, looking for guitars to sell. And my client requested for this month that he was looking for Les Pauls, specifically Greco Les Pauls. And so I went on a search and I bought a few. But this is the one that I want to talk about tonight. Now, so this is a Greco EG500B. EG500. I've never had, and I've had 450s, 500s, 600s, 700s. I've never had a 900 before. Now, why is this guitar significant? Why am I talking about it tonight? Why am I bringing this up? Well, a couple of things. I know it might be hard, but what is your most prized guitar? Not about price, the attachment value. Oh, that's easy. It's not hard. It's my acoustic guitar, my Yamaha acoustic. I've had it for decades. It's not even an electric. Now, this guitar was made in September of 1977. And why am I talking about it tonight? I'm talking about it tonight because when I was doing my guitar safari and I saw pictures of this guitar, the shop in Japan that I was in Yokohama, to be specific, that put it up, misidentified it. They had it up as an EG500B from 1977. Now, here's where the do your homework part comes in. Now, when I saw this, when it came up, as I was cruising that shop, then, let me backtrack. When I lived in Japan and was buying guitars, looking for guitars, one of the things that I like to do is go to secondhand shops. Like Treasure Chest was the one that was in my neighborhood, in my area. There was also Book Off, Hard Off, places like that. I like to go into shops like that because in Japan, these aren't just guitar and instrument shops. They sell Louis Vuitton bags. They sell a lot of secondhand stuff. As a matter of fact, their guitar sections can be relatively large to relatively small. And the shop clerks that work there, They have to immediately price the stuff as it comes in, and you got a Louis Vuitton bag coming in the morning. Then an hour later, you've got a Les Paul from Greco from the '70s. And next, you got a camera from and you got to keep it moving, and you're not always going to get it right. Now, because of the internet, it's not like it was back in the '90s and the early 2000s when I was in Japan, where if the guy didn't know, he didn't know. So you could get some deals. I got my guitar Monica Butterscotch, my Telecaster was one such a thing. They had no idea what they had. I got it for very cheap. But they make those mistakes. Now, of course, like I said, in this age of the internet, do you play guitar, brother? Yes, I do very much. Please go to Bandcamp and look up Mike McWilliams and listen to all of the lovely guitar playing that I do. Um, it's just not as easy to come across mistakes. So you have to have a keen eye. You've got to do your homework. And the minute I saw this, I said to myself, wait a minute. First of all, I know that there are no Greco guitars that are EG500s in 1977. The highest that they had in the budget model range was the 450s at that time. And then it skips up to the 700B. Now, I looked at this and I said, well, maybe it's actually a 700B from 7 because there was no 500s. But if you look at this, you'll notice that the pickups on this are double creams. They're double cream pickups. And to be honest with you, there are no, certainly in the lower levels, for even when you get to the next years when they do introduce the 500 and the 600 models, they don't have double cream pickups. So I got excited because I pulled something out of my home file. See, doing my research on Greco guitars in the past, hey, hello to you too, sir. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you in Russia. Um, you know, it was odd. It didn't look right. First of all, I said, well, there's no 500s in '77, so I knew automatically that was the first tip off. The second tip off were the double cream pickups. Um, Now, one of the issues gets into an artist named Jeff. One of the issues and why this is a mystery guitar gets into Jeff Beck. Actually, I'll talk about that here in a second. The 700B it does not have double creams, so I knew that it was something else. Now, in 1977, Jeff Beck was touring Japan with the Jan Hammer group, and he was quite it was quite the rage at that time in Japan. It was at a time when a guitar was at its what I consider to be its zenith, was the mid to late '70s. Guitar was at its zenith. It kind of trickled down from there. That was its zenith, going from '50s up to the '60s, reaching its peak in the mid to late '70s, and then declining from there. But because of Jeff Beck playing with Jon Hammer, everybody knows Jon Hammer, the composer. But a lot of the companies like Greco and Tokai, Ibanez, folks like that, they wanted to capitalize on the guitars that he had brought with him on tour. Now, if you go back to uh, Jeff Beck's guitars, and what was he playing? One of the guitars that he took on tour with him, and I did the research to find out what guitars did he have with him there in 1977 that lit such a spark that all of a sudden all of these Japanese manufacturers wanted to copy it. Was Jeff Beck's 1954 Gibson Les Paul. In November of 1972, while Jeff was passing through Memphis on tour with Jeff Beck, um, uh, I'm sorry. While Jeff was, I'm sorry, I'm reading. While Jeff was passing through Memphis, he came across an Oxblood Les Paul. He fell in love with the guitar. It was a distinctive brown, dark brown Oxblood finish, and he bought it. And from probably, the first Greco guitars were designed from the Japanese guys. They didn't have a Les Paul. And I'm not making this story up. So this is just to let you know how it was in the 70s. They looked at a picture of Free, God, what's his name? Boy, my mind is now. Here we go again. Just too much information up there. They looked at a picture of the Freeze guitarist, Les Paul, and a picture of it. And they didn't know that the back wasn't the same as the front. So they did a sunburst on the front and the back of that one of those first early Greco Les Paul copies. They were bolt-on necks too, by the way, because they only had a picture of the front of this guitar. That's a true story. And in the case of this, I think that if you're looking at this from the audience, this Oxblood brown guitar looks black, especially with lighting in the 1970s on stage being what it was. But because of that, they rushed out in mid to late of 1977, and they started producing the Jeff Beck, so it's the EG 900, 800 or 900J. And this was as best at that time that they could do to copy Jeff Beck's guitar. And for some reason, also, I don't know why, because Jeff Beck's guitar does not have double cream pickups. It has two black pickups, but they put double cream pickups in that. And when I saw this guitar on the screen here right behind me, I immediately thought that, oh my gosh, this is a very rare, because those were rare. Those were very rare. Almost a special order in regards to those. I thought I had found myself 77 Jeff Beck. I'll say for argument's sake, 900J. But the tailpiece, so then that's when you really got to do your homework. You got to look at this, and then you got to look at a 900J, and you got to start matching them up and seeing if they match. The other thing, on the back side of this guitar, the control plates are also cream colored as well, which also lets you know that it wasn't a 700B. A 700B did not have double cream pickups. There was no, 500s, but there was a 700B in 1977. The back on that, the back plates on that is black. The pickups on that are double black pickups. The thing about this is the hardware. So I looked at the hardware and I said to myself, no, because unless somebody swapped the tailpiece, because it had a very special tailpiece on it that is very similar to Jeff Beck's, it didn't have that. So then I knew, okay, it's a 900B, which is rare. It's in tiers of rare. The Jeff Beck would be here. The 900B would be about right there. So I automatically knew that the shop was selling a 900B for the price of a 500. And let me tell you something, the price difference was more than half. I immediately bought it, told my agent, buy it. So now it's mine. We'll have it here shortly. But they're often mislabeled as a 500 or a 700B. But the specs on this are very high end. Now, all of these 70s Grecos have pancake bodies. So in terms of the difference between this and a 700, really, both of them have pancake bodies. Both of them have three-piece maple necks. The fretboard on the 700B is rosewood. Here's the thing. People think that the fretboard on this guitar, the 900B, is ebony. However, there are reports that I have read in in the research that I did that shows that it's actually possibly, strongly possibly Brazilian rosewood, which they had stocks of at that time. And I'll know it when I smell it. Brazilian rosewood has a very particular smell to it. I know, I know it's weird sitting there smelling your fretboard, but especially after you clean it, it gives off a very sweet smell. So we'll see about that. Now, what is the difference between this guitar and the 700B that was available in 1977 as well? What they basically did is they took a 700B, they put mother of pearl inlays on it, possibly Brazilian rosewood fretboard, and they put in nice pickups. With a 700, you usually got yourself U2000 pickups, which are not bad pickups. We've had a few guitars in that had U2000 pickups. But the 900B that you see here behind me had, in the original, in 76, they had Seymour Duncan SH1s. Towards the mid to late 77, and here again, where I'm talking about, you have to do your homework. You could have had three pickups in this. You could either have the U3000s, which are very, very nice, or DiMarzio PAFs. I'll know it once I look at it in person because the DiMarzio PAFs have three holes in the pickup covers. Whereas the U3000 doesn't. But either side, you got higher end pickups, higher end finishings on it as well. Kim Jong-un supports your channel. Man, I hear stories about that dude sometimes that nobody could possibly be that insane. You know, you're going to put a guy, a general of your army, in the middle of a field and launch a mortar at him just because he pissed you off over something. I mean, that's kind of extreme. High-end binding, another, just the fit and finish. Now, again, the EG700 is listed in this 1977 catalog. The EG900B and the Jeff Beck, the EG900J, are not listed because, again, these are things that came out later in the year, so they're not in those catalogs. Some things were carried over into the 78 catalog, but they weren't there listed in the 77 catalog. And so therefore, that's another one of the reasons why they're very, very hard to identify. And again, here, because I know what a 500 EG5, I looked at enough of those bastards to know what they look like. I've never seen one like this. So that was an automatic tip-off one. Again, like I said, knowing those other things really made a difference. You know, really... I'm sorry, I got it here in my notes. Sorry, it's the EG600J is the Jeff Beck model. The 600J is the Jeff Beck model. The EG900B, both of these were likely added later in 77. Interestingly enough, as a side note, the RG900B possibly follows as a deluxe upgrade to the EG700B. So you can look that up. I'm sorry, the EG900B is a deluxe upgrade actually from the 700B basically. But it was still inspired by this wave of desire for Japanese guitarists at that time to get a Jeff Beck Les Paul without paying the Gibson price. So they made a few of these. Again, like I said, if that guy at that shop had taken the time to look at a Greco catalog from 77, he would have seen that there was no EG500. But their mistake is my gain. Now, how is it my gain? Well, those guitars retail. this one right here. So this guitar right here, being relatively rare, as I said, and really nice, um, they retail for, on the top end, about 1,800 euros. I'm sorry, yeah, 1,800 euros. On the low end, they'll go as low as 1,250. So you have a range between 1,250 and 1,799 on these guitars. The DiMarzios or the Maxon U3000s add also value to it. And if it's been kept original like this one, again, I try to buy them as clean and as original as possible for this very reason. Then of course that adds serious collector value. And so they sold it to me for what a 500 would be going for around these days, which I can say, I usually don't like to talk about these things, but anyway, you can look it up. They usually go between 450 and 500 euros. And so, and I bargained them down. I know it sounds terrible, but I told my agent, ask them if because they wanted Hachiman Hasen yen for it, and I told them I'll offer them Hachiman yen for it, plus shipping, and they went for it. So it was even more of a savings on it. So yeah, because this is a Hachiman yen guitar, these things generally go for Ju Nanaman, Ju Hachiman, Ju Kuman yen, double, more than double the price when they come up. So there's that. Now, this mistake paid off. And so what is the takeaway from this? Well, Jeff Beck's influence led to rare Greco Les Paul customs being and guitar and standards being produced in mid '77. And unless you were a complete guitar nerd, you would not know that. And therefore, you would misidentify this higher end sleeper model. And and if you're into buying guitars secondhand, if you're going to go out there and you're going to wet your teeth and get into the secondhand market, specialize in something. I specialize in vintage Japanese guitars from the period of 1975 until around roughly 1989. And whereas there are hundreds of those out there, I really specialize in the ones that I know give people the most kicks. Strats, Les Pauls, Flying Bs, on the exotic sides, things like that. And I take a great deal of time studying them, especially Grecos and Tokais. I think I have a very good vocabulary of those, and Aria Pro 2 guitars to some extent now as well. And in terms of their history, so do your homework. And also if you do your homework, look how it paid off. Because of one clerk's mistake in Yokohama, I have in my possession a guitar that, quite frankly, I would keep for myself, if I could. I can't, so I shan't. One of the things, though, however, I will say is that this is based on a 60s neck, so I already know that we're not going to get along. I do not like 60s necks. They're too thin for me. Most of these models in '77 had 60s necks to them. So it doesn't have the thick baseball bats that I like, because I got pretty big mitts. Then it's not really for me. But just as a keeper, just as a beauty, it's just a beauty, and it's a rare find. And know your specs. Don't trust the shop label. If you're shopping online, or if you're in a used shop or a pawn shop, or whatever kind of situation you find yourself in when you're looking at secondhand gear, you may stumble across stuff like this. And I thought in this day of the internet age that that me getting fines like this were pretty much were over, which they are, but they're not, because I did come across one that I can say for sure was a steal. It was a steal and a fine. And again, it's because you do your homework. You constantly do your homework. You make sure that, if you're looking into something, that you know what it is. You know what it is you're looking into. And sometimes, because of that history, because of that knowledge, you can find yourself a wiener. And so, do your homework, guys. This is a great real world example that I can offer to you. Why all that stuff is disgusting. Why it is, but sleep like a baby. Why it is you do your homework. Why it's so. Maddie Two Hats. Hey, how you doing, sir? Welcome, welcome. We're getting up to your favorite part of the show here in a minute. Maddie, good timing. Why you do your homework. Because opportunities like this may come in front of you. And if it comes in front of you and you don't know what you're looking at, there have been many a guy, in a jewelry store who was looking at something and didn't know that they were looking at. It ended up being more than it was. The obverse is usually true, but generally speaking, there are some things out there if you're of a knowledgeable eye. So how do you get a knowledgeable eye? Well, you train that eye. Train that eye. You train that eye to know what it is that you're looking at. You trust your gut. When I looked at that picture of that when they were selling, I immediately sat up in my chair and I said, wait a minute, that really? At first I thought when I saw it was really the double cream pickups that first caught my eye. Not the fact that it was an EG500, that came second. The double cream, I said, did somebody swap pickups in this? And if they did, that's good for me, because if they're valuable pickups, I can take those out. I can put in a set of some of these nice, Ionical pickups I have, Chinese made, and put it in it. It's a swap pickup anyway. It doesn't have its originals, and sell it like that, and then sell the pickups, if they're nice ones, for a little extra, or trade them in. Sometimes I do that. Not often, but sometimes. But Stephen Whitney in the house. Hey, how you doing, sir? Good to have you here, Stephen. Good to have you. Good to see you, sir. Hope you've been well. But that was the first tip off for those white pickups, those double creams. I'm sorry, not white, double creams, because 500s don't have double creams. Wait a minute. Is there a 577? No, there's no 577. So again, trust your gut. My gut told me something wasn't right. It was telling me something, trying to convince me it was something that it was not. My gut was telling me, wait a minute, look a little deeper, which leads to research the gear. So then I had to go back. I remembered that little bit of information I have in what I call my hum file. That's the part of my brain where I read something over time. I store it there if it's interesting. And over time, usually something will come along to confirm it. In this case, I remember them talking about those Jeff Beck EG500Js, which are extremely rare, as I said. So I said, holy crap, is this a 600J? No, it turned out to be a 900B, which is just as good, almost as good. So research the gear, have a hum file, have that little bit of information, and which is again why starting out, looping back, finishing this subject up where I started out tonight, I don't have a wall of guitars because I don't have it in me to play a wall of guitars. Now, I've never knocked anybody for having it. Some of you guys out there have quite extensive collections, and that's one thing. But I don't have a wall of guitars behind me ever, even when I could have. There were points in Singapore where I had 4 Les Pauls, some nice Strats, some nice Japanese guitars. I had quite a few that I could have hung up when I was starting off my YouTube channel, but I didn't do it then either. If you go all the way back to me in my studio in Singapore when I first started, you'll see that I never did that. I never did that. And the reason is because, I have to be intimate with the instrument. And so, you know, circling back to that concept, that initial thought that I had at the beginning of this live stream, this is another reason why, because you want to be intimate with your knowledge of an instrument, so that when in my desire and my passion, really, if I can use that, I hate using that word, but it's true in this case, we can use it, is made in Japan vintage guitars. And so therefore, I've made it my passion, okay, for like, it's got to be another word. Anyway, to become intimate with my knowledge of them, and it pays off. Hello, you look like a very handsome Don Cheadle. B445. Hello, sir. That's a good one. Thank you. Yeah, Don's the okay looking brother. He's okay looking, you know. He's a solid guy. That's enough. Thank you. That's I'll take that as a compliment over Obama any day of the week. So do your homework, guys. Here's a real life example how doing your homework can pay off. I cannot wait. It should be here. It might be here by this Sunday, actually, because I'm using FedEx this time. Usually I ship EMS, but me and my guy are trying out FedEx this time. See if the rates are cheaper, the VATs are cheaper, and if the time is cut in half, how long is the delivery. And so that might actually be here where I can show it to you guys this Sunday. That's exciting. So we'll see. But do your homework, guys. If you do your homework, it can pay off. And when chances like these don't pass by every day. If I didn't see this, certainly somebody else would have seen it, and maybe even somebody who didn't know what it was would have bought it, and they all along they would have thought they had a 500 until somebody who did know what it was would have corrected them on that. What vintage Japanese brands do you see going up in value aside Ibanez and original ESP? Grecos are going up, Tokais are going up. I know it because I see it all the time, especially Grecos. The Fujigen made Greco guitars are going up in value. It may be because of guys like me indirectly. I'll be frank with you because I buy and sell wholesale. Now, what my client does with it, and I've seen his prices when he puts. I'm not going to say who it is, but it's a major retailer here in the Netherlands. When he gets it from me and he puts it up on his side, his prices are at the upper range. Of course, that's one of the reasons why the quality that I try to get is as good as possible. But I may be indirectly responsible for setting the market in some way, in some small ways. So I have to be cognizant of that. But I have seen Grecos starting to, go up, which is something that does not benefit me because it's a catch 22. I'm trying to buy them cheap so that he can mark them up to make money on it. But if he marks it up too much and then sets the market, then when I go to buy them, I have to buy them more for more. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. Sorry, I'm kind of going through this mental exercise as I sit here with you guys, but it's quite true. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of free good gear lately. Yeah, that's another way, Stephen. Yeah. So do your homework, guys. This was just my tricky ass way of tricking you into putting on my school teacher's hat and encouraging you to do your homework. Because if you're interested about Grecos, then study everything that you can about Grecos. Read every article, study the forums, look at them if you come across one, but know everything about them. Same thing with Tokais. I have to do a lot. And so, I have my home file, but in my head, I also have my circular file. And stuff gets thrown away into that all the time. I forget more stuff actually as I'm getting older than most folks know. And I have to be honest with you, it takes that. But if you have that kind of dedication, it pays its dividends. And also, again, when someone asks you about your guitar, hey, what's that? Well, you can tell them about it, as opposed to walking a room and seeing 20 guitars and saying, well, what about this one? Oh, but it's just not for me. Have you ever played the band Vintage before? Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think that Vintage is a buy. I mentioned in the last live stream that along those same lines, Grassroots. If you can find yourself a Grassroots Les Pauls from roughly 10 to 15 years ago, buy it. Because uh, with vintage, you can find some nice stuff. Didn't I have a vintage Les Paul? I may have had one of those. I have to go back to Singapore video and take a look. I saw a Greco Flying V a few days ago with a price tag of 3,700. Yes, sir. They didn't make a lot of those, and the construction again, by the way, the Greco RB700 that I had to do all that restoration work to, the sanding and the fret level polish, that I had to do on that. All that work I put into that thing, the derusting of it, it sold. I got paid on the invoice of that on Monday. And boy, was I happy to be rid of that thing. You know, that's also a danger of vintage guitars, is that somebody will sell you something like that, seem like a deal, but boy, I'm glad that that sold. I am super happy with that one. And I know I'm digressing from the Greco Flying V, but they made those really well, just back there in the 70s, to the point where they were duplicates of the guitars that they were copying. That's why that RB700 being a copy of Rickenbacker. Most Rickenbacker guys will tell you that RB700, 800, and 1200, I think it went even up to 1200 in that series, were the closest thing you were going to find to a real Rickenbacker. And the same story is with that Flying V, and also the rarity of it. I found that book you were reading, got me a copy. I actually grew up in San Fernando Valley, California, so I know a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, Music Companion, read that book. I've been reading this book for about a decade now. Off and on, I go back, I revisit it because something will come up in my home file of weird shit and get me, getting back to this book. And I thought I would share it with you guys. We're going to read some more here right now, actually. I did find out also that Korg guitars make a lot of import guitars from PRSS. Yes. Yeah, Korg. Killer for cheap. Yeah. Mike, what's your thoughts on the Ernie Ball Music Man St. Vincent? Yeah. One shaped like an hourglass. So, yeah, man, I checked that out. I saw that. Um, is that in relation, by the way, to the music producer St. Vincent? Is that her design? Did she do that? She's got a couple of things out there that she's got her hand in. If it is, I'm curious. I like, if it's her, I admire her a great deal. If it's something else, I don't know. So, yeah, I think it may be. I'll look that up because I think it couldn't be, because that would be too much of a coinky dink. And she likes weird stuff like that. So we're going to talk about Jackson Browne tonight. So let's talk about the Laurel Canyon scene. Let's go back to 1965, Laurel Canyon. And let's wrap up tonight's live stream going back to the book Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon by David McGowan, where I am going to continue to point out to you that some of the rock legends are not exactly the people that, the pages of 17 magazine made them out to be. I always found that weird, man. Remember those magazines back with those pop magazines? Like because I had a kid sister, so she had like 17 and Teen Pop and stuff like this is even before like Us magazine, stuff like that. But you would see like these older dudes like in their 20s, even in some cases late 30s, in like these teen pop. Okay, I give you David Partridge, but if some of these guys. Anyway, I digress. Jackson Browne was one of them. Now, you're probably going to get bored with this, but Jackson Browne also was the product of a career military family. Browne's father was assigned to post-war Reconstruction work in Germany, which very likely means that he was in the employ of the OSS, the precursor to the now known CIA. Now, U.S. involvement in post-war Reconstruction in Germany largely consisted of maintaining as much of the Nazi infrastructure as possible while shielding war criminals from capture and prosecution. As we know, Operation Paperclip came out of that. If you're interested in and digging into a movie that was kind of hinting into that in a weird way, which is why it's one of my favorite Marvel movies. Check out Captain America: Civil War. The undercurrent theme of that is Operation Paperclip and the results now of what happens when you let those guys, loose. But anyway, I digress. Now, against that backdrop, Jackson Browne was born in a military hospital in Heidelberg, Germany. Now, other sites will list him being born in Northern California. So there's a little discrepancy there, but there's that when I looked into it. Again, I've looked into a lot of this stuff to see if what he's talking about is absolutely true, and I hate to say that the majority of that there's discrepancies, but they're not major ones. He was born in Heidelberg, Germany, and 2 decades later, somehow or another, he ended up in Laurel Canyon. Let's talk about, very quickly, Jerry Buckley, Dan Peck, and Dewey Bunnell. Individually, these three names probably are unknown to a lot of you guys out there, even me, but collectively we know them as the band America. So these are the members of the band America. They had everybody knows, Ventura Highway. I love that song. I have to tell you, I heard that the other day. It came on my feed and I was listening to it. And that is the quintessential, that really takes me to back in the day, the feeling. I can't describe to you guys the feeling of California, especially Los Angeles in the 1970s when I was growing up. And that song really hits that. A Horse with No Name, the Wizard of Oz theme, the Tin Man. All three of these guys, you guessed it, were products of the military intelligence community. Buckley's dad was a commander of the U.S. Air Force base in London that was deeply involved in intelligence operation. Both Bunnell's and Peck's father were both career Air Force officers and serving under Buckley's dad, by the way. So these three guys, one dad was in charge of two of these other guys' dads at an Air Force base in London, in England. And somehow or another, their sons ended up forming a band called America. By the way, they all were drawn to Laurel Canyon in 65 too as well. Interesting. We talk about the monkeys. I mentioned the other night that the monkeys do not escape. Hey, hey, we're the monkeys. You guys know that. People say we monkey around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down. Boy, I remember the lyrics to that song. Well, because I listened to it damn well almost, I mean, it was a rerun by the early 70s. The St. Vincent guitar is named after Annie Clark. Thank you, Scott, for looking that up. Interesting. Anyway, I dig it. It's funky, but I dig it. Um, when I was a kid, that was on like solid rerun rotation. I grew up watching the Monkees from the time I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. I was watching the Monkees. This was like 1972, 73, 74. Um, well, actually, maybe I was older. Anyway, Michael Nesmith of the Monkees and Corey Wells of the Three Dog Night, who were ensconced in Laurel Canyon, both arrived in LA not long after serving time in the United States Air Force. Now, Mike Nesmith of the Monkees also inherited a family fortune estimated in 1965 at $25 million. And I was curious. I said to myself, wow, one of the Monkees guys was a freaking multi-millionaire. Did you guys know that? Did you know that Mike, he passed away in 2016, 2018, recently, within the last decade, he passed away. But that man was a multi-millionaire. And by the way, because I was curious, because I have that kind of mind, how much in 1965 dollars would $25 million be today? It is $250 million. It is 200. It is 253,808,716 cents. This man, Mike, so he was extremely rich. Now, how did he get that money? Because his mom invented whiteout. It's called Tipex when it first came out. His mother was the inventor of whiteout. You know that stuff we used to use in college before the internet, where we had to white things out on our papers on the typewriter? His mother invented that. So that's how he got his fortune. I also heard Eddie Van Halen has lots of stock in the I can't read, 3-in-1 oil brands. Okay, man, I'm glad we don't need to use whiteout anymore. Yeah. So this man, Michael Nesmith from the Monkey, was extremely rich. He was richer than everybody there put together. Okay. Yeah, I don't miss that either. I hated that stuff. Now, Graham Parsons, who had briefly replaced David Cosby in The Byrds before fronting the Flying Burrito Brothers, was the son of Major General Cecil Ingram Coondog Connor II, a decorated military officer and bomber pilot who flew over 50 combat missions. Parsons was also an heir on his mother's side to the formidable Snively family fortune, said to be the wealthiest family in Winter Haven, Florida. The Snively family was the proud owner of Snively Groves, which reportedly owned as much as 1/3 of all the citrus groves in the state of Florida. So you had these two guys. Actually, to be honest with you, I don't know who was richer, Michael Nesmith or Graham Parsons. But either way, you had these guys who were not only, now, of course, this was the World War II generation, their parents. So it's not strange, again, like I said, that they would have parents involved in the military. But the fact that all of them had parents, and even some of themselves were involved in the military. Snidely whiplash. Um, it's good to be absolutely loaded before you do music. Yeah, yeah. That way you don't have to worry about. You can say to the record company, you're going to distribute this album for me. Here's $1 million, like Taylor Swift, by the way, did. Yeah, because she was wealthy before she even laid foot in her recording studio, because her father is an international banker. But I digress. But again, you see a common theme here. So as you scroll through the roster of Laurel Canyon Superstar, what one finds the most, more often than not, are the sons and daughters of the military intelligence complex and the sons and daughters of extreme wealth and privilege, and sometimes you'll find both rolled up into one convenient package. Every once in a while, you will also stumble across a former child actor like Brandon DeWild or Monkey Mickey Dolenz. So here we have another monkey. Mickey Dolenz was a child actor. Brandon DeWild, it was the kid actor, I do believe, in HR Puffin stuff. I do believe. Or Van Dyke Parks. You might encounter some mental patients like James Taylor. I love James Taylor. This is not a knock on James Taylor, but this is a fact, a known fact, who spent time in 2 different mental institutions in Massachusetts before hitting the Laurel Canyon scene. I told you, there is a fine line between insanity and genius. And there are some genius people who cross that line, and I think that James Taylor is one of those at that point. You got Larry Wildman Fisher, who's also on the scene there in Laurel Canyon. You have Warren Zevon, who was a lieutenant, whose father was a lieutenant for the infamous LA crime lord Mickey Cohen. All these folks gathered nearly simultaneously along the narrow, winding roads of Laurel Canyon in the summer in and about of 1965. They came from across the country, from as far as Washington, D.C., as well as Canada and England, and at least in one case, all the way from Nazi Germany. They came even through, at the time, there was no music industry in LA. I want to reinforce this fact, that there was no music industry in Los Angeles at that time. There was nothing. There was no, what it is, what it became. These guys, again, like I said, were gathered there in order to create one of the reasons. There's always multiple reasons with these things, but one of the reasons was to create an LA music scene. They came through even though in retrospect there was no discernible reason for them to do so. It would of course make sense these days for an aspiring musician to venture out to Los Angeles, but in those days, at the centers of the music universe were Nashville, Memphis, and New York. It wasn't until the industry drew the Laurel Canyon crowd to this one place that you'll see. Well, rather, this crowd transformed Los Angeles into the epicenter of the music industry that we know today. To what then do we attribute this unprecedented gathering of future aspiring musical superstars in the hills above Los Angeles? What was it that inspired them to all head out west at once? Perhaps Neil Young said it best when he told an interviewer that he couldn't really say why he headed out to LA circa 1966. He and others were just going like lemmings. Matty Two Hats says, not only military by high rank, yes. We're not talking about the sons and daughters of privates and sergeants. We're talking about majors, captains, generals, admirals, in the case of Morrison. How old is the Capitol Records building? Let's look that up. I think it's been there since the 40s, as I seem to recall. As you guys know, I recorded in there. Let's take a look. Oh, Capitol building, yeah, because they called it the house that Nat King Cole built, because it was the house that Nat built, due to the vast number of records and amounts of merchandise that Nat King Cole sold for the company. It was there since 1955. Yeah, 1955. It was completed, its construction was 1956. But again, think of what that music scene was. It was jazz, it was big band, it was slowly getting to early rock and roll like Pat Boone and stuff like that. But it wasn't what Geffen Records, which was started at 65, coincidentally, as I said, the same time that the rest of the stuff started going on. I have a David Geffen story, but I don't know if I'll tell it. It's one of those ones that I don't know if I should say. But anyway, yeah, 65. So, I'll wrap it up there tonight. I think that's a good place to stop. So we've introduced a cast of characters. I have demonstrated, with the exception of Joni Mitchell, that all of them were involved in one way or the other with the military industrial complex. Directly. Also scattered in there were a couple of people who were so wealthy at that time that having a gig on TV was a laugh. For Michael Nesmith to be a monkey on TV was just a laugh for him. I always wondered, if you look at the Day in the Life Beatles video, go on YouTube, look up the video for A Day in the Life that was shot back in Apple Studios back in the day. And you'll see Michael Nesmith there. And I always thought to myself, wow, what is a monkey doing hanging around with a beetle at that time, when the monkeys were supposed to be kind of like a jokey, rip-off parody of the Beatles, in a way. And it's because that man was rich enough, he could fly back and forth, Do you understand what I'm saying to you? There were a lot of relationships going on back and forth then that were a lot deeper and a lot more deeper. We'll just use that word for right now, than a lot of people realize. Geffen is the real winner out of all that. He's a billionaire. Yeah, he was set up to be that way. We'll talk about David Geffen. We'll get into David Geffen here in this book. But, it's just not a coinky dink, is the point of this. So I hope you guys find this interesting. I sure as heck do. A little bit of music history is always fun. And, you can enjoy the music. This doesn't take anything away from the music that some of these songs I love, frankly, from these people. But don't get it twisted. Know who these people were. Don't idolize anybody. You shouldn't have anybody as a hero, because often your heroes will disappoint you. Or your heroes have agendas to them that may not be in sync with your own. So you either take things in life at face value or you dig deeper. If you dig deeper, then be prepared to dig all the way. If you go through life taking things at face value, maybe you'll make it through okay. Maybe reality will smack you in the face one day and you won't be prepared for it. But either way, you can still enjoy the music. But just be aware who these people were. With, again, like I said, the exception of Joni Mitchell. So thank you guys for showing up tonight. I will see you in the Sunday night live show, Sunday at Mike's. I hope you enjoyed this program this evening. I enjoyed bringing it to you. And don't forget to leave a like up here, and don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section if you could be so kind. Take the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And until the next one, you guys take care. Bye bye.